STC and had enjoyed your lunch. Thanks for coming here and being a part of STC learning sessions all throughout the year. Our upcoming session is about the topic of the day, user experience, and we have Shiva Subramaniam, who is going to present about user experience. A little bit about Shivi. She has an extensive experience in information development and is now with HCL Bangalore. She's constantly looking for to optimize writing processes and delivering delightful experiences to the users. She has been presented with a number of awards for her professional achievements. She's also an UX design enthusiast. She pursues online courses in field of design and is actively contributing towards design work. She's now on a mission to formalize the process of UX writing in her organization. Please welcome Shivi.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I really thank STC for this opportunity, STC India for this great opportunity. I'm presenting for the first time. I'm very excited and equally nervous about the whole thing. Good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this session. Okay, so you have always been using digital products, software, UIs, products of any kind, right? And had there been times when you are really annoyed, frustrated, using or going through the flows that the user interface presents to you? Many a times, right? And maybe it is a great, cool user interface with well thought out designs, information architecture, greatly designed user flows and everything else. But then the user is still disappointed. He is unhappy. And I personally think it could be the words that might have a negative impact on the user experience. And the topic today that I'm going to talk about today is all about developing content for the user interface. Proceed. Just to clarify a bit upfront, the scope of this is limited to user interfaces. I'm not going to talk about any content that you write for the other, pieces that need content in your organization. This is only about digital user interfaces, the interfaces that your customers or users will, primarily interact with. That's what I'm going to talk about today. This is the process that I'm going to talk about today is called UX writing for the a better user experience. And the unit of UX writing is called microcopy. Oops. Does this work? I used this and this is happening. Maybe I'll just use the laptop to navigate. Use the laptop. Yep, thank you. Before proceeding, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to this man, my father, Shivi Subramanian. He's a retired teacher of physics, without whom I wouldn't be standing here today presenting on a topic that's got everything to do with the language called English. He has been my guru. Love you, Dad. And this is the agenda for today. I'm going to tell you what UX writing is all about, how you can practice UX writing in your project, who can make good UX writers, and then finally, what benefits UX writing can offer. I'm going to show you a few dialogues here, mostly from the Windows operating system, and I'm sure most of you, you're familiar with most of them, and you will also be able to figure out what the problem is with each of them. Do you really want to cancel the reservation? And you give the users the options of yes and cancel. Is this clear? Would you go ahead, click yes or cancel? This is ambiguous, right? And then this message, I love this, right? This is highly technical. The user is not going to make out anything from this message. Highly technical. And this one is using all caps, which reduces readability. And there is an error message, really witty one. It says error message, and then the operation completed successfully. What do I get out of it? And it's simple OK button. And what do I do next? This is again another favorite of mine. And this tells you all technical details, and it doesn't really give you any information about where you came from, why you landed this in this era on this page, or what to do next. Okay, this is heights. You said display an error, and you also blame the user. It's like it's not our fault. Okay. So all these error messages, all these dialogues basically have something in common. Did you figure out what that is? It's the language that's used is robotic, mechanical, and it has no human connection. UX writing is all about making that connection with the user and how we want to practice it in your project. So UX writing, what is UX writing? We know that there is some disconnect somewhere. We have been developing content for the user interfaces for many, many years. We've been doing this for a long time, but this been a gap wherein people who are not experts in writing create the content, like designers, developers, and everybody else in the team who is really not an expert develops the content. That is where the problem lies. And then I acknowledge that a problem exists. Okay, what do I do? What do I do about it? The solution you have is UX writing. And you will have to consider every piece of text that goes into the user interface as an opportunity to motivate the users, engage with them, help them, instruct them, and more importantly, to retain them. That is the whole purpose of UX writing. Okay, I have a bit of history here where this all started. A product designer called Joshua Porter, back in 2009, when he was working on an online form for an e-commerce project, found something really interesting. There was an online form in which people had to enter their mailing address or billing address. And then users ran into a lot of problems, errors, because the addresses they entered were all wrong. And then he went ahead and added a small tooltip, just a sentence that said, enter the address that's connected with your credit card. And the errors just like that went off. That is when he realized the text or the content that you present on the user interface is equally important as your designs, the design work itself. And the short but highly influential text that you write for the user interfaces is called microcopy. And then these three stages in any user flow is what defines UX writing, the requirement for UX writing. And this is basically from a book called Microcopy, The Complete Guide, written by Kinneret Ifra. And I love this. So when during the user flow, when the user gets started with the whole thing, you do something or write content that motivates the user. And then when he is actually doing the job, have some content that motivates him to do the job and accomplish the task. And then at the end, give him some feedback so that he knows, okay, the task is complete. And this is the basic definition of UX writing that Kinneret writes in her book. How do I practice UX writing? 3 simple but very, at a high level, I'm going to tell you what it takes to practice UX writing. The first is define your brand's voice. What do you mean by brand's voice? Anybody? What do you think would be brand's voice? Sorry? Not not the internet. Any other guesses? Right, the personality of your brand itself. Not sorry? Exactly. Not really. I'm not talking about the tone. That will come later. This is only about the brand's voice, which is going to remain consistent all across your product portfolio. It will not change at all. Say, for example, I represent HCL software, and for HCL software, there is a voice, and it doesn't change. And this is the first step when you want to practice UX writing is to find your brand's voice. The second thing is to update the content strategy. This is not really, in new companies or budding companies, this is not going to be in place, right? In established companies like Google, HCL, IBM, you already have the content strategy in place. What to write and where and how, everything is already defined. You have a style guide, you have a brand manual which tells you everything, right? For small companies, new brands, new companies, this is something that you will have to work on as a team. You will have to come up with content strategy, UX writing principles and guidelines, and everything is going to be part of that content strategy. If you don't have the content strategy in place, then you will have to start with defining the principles or the guidelines for UX writing. That is a very good starting point for you. And then formalize the process. How do you, I'll just tell you in a few minutes later how you can get the process formalized in your project. You will have to incorporate the process of UX writing into your existing design process. Okay, how do you define the brand's voice? This is a huge exercise in itself. In companies like Google and IBM and everywhere, the voice is already defined. They have standard set of voice attributes that define the personality of the brand. Yeah. So this is where you will have to be a little attentive. This is this thing called voice and then tone. These two are distinctly two different things. Voice is not the same as tone. Voice is brand's personality, as I mentioned earlier. This is going to be unique and it doesn't change at all. Let's say, for example, I have my own unique voice. It doesn't change. Whoever I talk to, in whatever situation I am in, the voice doesn't change. But the tone is all about the emotions I apply to my voice, depending on the situation or whom I am talking to. Depends on all that. I will not use the same tone that I use when I talk to my boss, right? The same voice tone when I talk to my child. It's going to be completely two different tones. That's basically all the emotions that you apply to your voice. And when do you define your voice, brand's voice? When you have a new brand, when you're a new company, and you want to fine tune your brand's identity, when you're going ahead with some digital campaigns, and when the target audience of your product base changes, the characteristics keep changing. So when there is something about the target audience changes, then you will have to refine your product's voice. I have an example just to tell you the difference between voice and tone. This is a very familiar road sign, no parking, right? And then if the transport department has its own voice, I would define that as authoritative, condescending, and imposing. This is a rule that all of us will have to follow. Voice is about what I want to say, and tone is about how I say it. That's the basic difference between the two. So when it comes to tone, I'm going to express the same message. The voice is going to be the same. I have the same content here, no parking. I'm going to express that in different tones. Tow away zone. I am basically telling you the same thing, no parking, but in different ways. And I'm being professional, dry, and formal, right? A slight variation to that. Want your vehicle towed away? Park here, right? And the tone I use is conversational, friendly. I'm sorry about the overlap, and then a little playful, right? And then a third variation. We seem to love your beast as much as you do. Park it here, and you will see what we can do. Right? I am being a little playful, conversational, and witty, right? But then I don't mean to say you can apply, you can try all this with your product. This is not meant for the end users you serve. I took this example to just to demonstrate the difference between the two. Okay, some examples here. MailChimp is basically a marketing platform, and they define their personality as warm, welcoming, and helpful. This is their voice. And then Apple has it clean, simple, and confident. Slack, very familiar to all of you, I think. This is a very famous, very popular collaboration platform that most of us use. Clear, concise, and human. And the HCL, the company that I work for, HCL, we are confident, authentic, and simple. And this applies to any piece of content that goes out of HCL, that represents HCL's brand, the personality of HCL as a brand. Okay, this is about the tones. And I have used these tone spectrum, the permissible variations of your voice, changes to your voice that can be used or applied to your content. That's basically a spectrum, a range. And in HCL, we fall in the mid range, right? And you can see there are different emotions on both the sides, right? 4 categories of emotions, and there is a range. It's a spectrum, basically. So I, as a brand, HCL as a brand cannot be funny. We are professional, we are clean and simple, but we are not funny. We are not funny at all. And then informal, and this is one extreme. On the other end, you have the other extreme. And then HCL uses variations of its voice, which are, indicated here with thicker lines here. As you can see, we are clever, earnest, conversational, professional, friendly, courteous, passionate, upbeat. And it's not really easy to make out the difference between voice and tone and apply the appropriate tone to your content. Comes only with practice. It's not a straightforward job, but it comes with practice, I can tell you from my own experience. And this is all of us, they keep insisting that only when you have words that are familiar to your users, when you are simple, when you use a natural flowing language, only then you can connect with your users. No second thoughts about it. And they insist that if you are conversational, like you're talking to a person, right, only then the user experience is going to be much more enhanced. I am not kidding at all when I say be conversational. It actually breaks down the barrier between spoken and written language. You're going to be, with your conversational language, you're going to be friendly, casual, connecting, but definitely not at the cost of clarity, respect, and professionalism. And people ask, when I write content for the digital interfaces, may I use slang, humor, emotions? That's again a very interesting question. It again depends on what your brand or your product is perceived as. That majorly depends on the personality of a brand. If your brand manual or if there is nothing of that sort available in your project or in your company, it's a good time to start working on that. You can initiate, you can take this opportunity to start working on this initiative. Come up with a style guide that clearly lays out the principles, standards, rules that you need to follow to apply voice and tone appropriately to your content. Any idea what this is? Sorry? Alexa, that's a voice, fictional character that's given to the voice interface that Google Home uses, right? And this is one of the great examples for being conversational interfaces. Have you seen kids talking to Alexa? Have you? They treat Alexa like just another member in their family. They shout at the interface. They literally shout. I've seen my kids shouting at Alexa. Alexa, I wanted you to play this song. Why the hell are you doing this? They actually interact with the interface, and that, I think, is the success of the whole product. It's one of the best examples I can give you. Okay, so we just saw how to define your brand's voice and how to apply tones and everything. Now, the second step is to update your content strategy. Like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have a content strategy in your organization in place yet, then it's definitely, you can just start with defining your styles and voice and tone for your UX content, the UI content, right? You can start from there. That's a good starting point, and you can expand the uh, the basic idea to cover all the other areas of content that you work on in your company. Content strategy is basically the master plan. This is all about all the content that the company delivers, and it applies to any type of content, be it a marketing communication, marketing collateral, or even your internal communication, external communication, UI content. Anything could be part of the content strategy. UX writing is just one piece, it's a subset of your content strategy, and it's only or primarily targeted at your product UIs. Okay, this is the last step in the steps, that the procedure that you can follow to implement the process of UX writing in your organization. Formalizing the process, what does it take? Integrate UX writers. This is not about just writing any piece of content. This is like, you will also have to have that inclination towards UX. If you are a design person, if you're a design thinker, problem solver, then this is definitely for you. You will have to definitely have some background, at least you should have the fundamentals, UX fundamentals strong enough to make the switch. Integrate UX writers, and then you will have to find a place for content in your design sprints. I'm not sure how many of you, or how many companies really follow the agile methodology, but that's very important. Back in HCL software, we follow agile methodology, and we have found a place for content for the product UIs in the design sprints. And then you have to define your content requirements in the first place, and then only you start working on the actual content, or start developing the actual content only after your content requirements are final. And test the microcopy iteratively, which means this is again like in the case of development, testing, and design. Even the content will have to go through multiple iterations. You don't really get it all right the first time. Definitely not. So you will have to go through multiple iterations to make improvements to your copy. Okay, how many of you are familiar with design thinking process? Have you seen this? Not exactly the same, but something similar, which talks about design thinking. Anybody? So this is we follow in HCL software. We follow the IBM design thinking methodology to come up with our designs, product designs. So design thinking primarily involves 5 phases. Empathize, which is basically understanding the requirements and the pain points of your users. Define, after you analyze your users, understand their concerns, pain points, problems, and everything, you define the problem. Empathize, define, and ideate. This is basically about how to solve the potential problem that the user is facing right now, right? come up with ideas, different ideas to solve the problem. And fourth one is prototype. The it's about developing a prototype which will help users solve the problem. And then test and evaluate. It's all about testing the prototype, and then this is going to be a cycle. This is not a straightforward waterfall kind of a design process, but this happens iteratively. This goes in multiple loops, right? So in HCL software, we have incorporated UX writing into the design process. So in the first phase of defining the problem, as UX writers, we don't really have much to do. As in, we just closely observe the designers and understand the user personas, the different types of users that we are targeting, right? Understand the user personas, empathy maps. It's all about the maps that define why we are targeting the user groups that have that kind of a problem, right? Empathy maps and as-is scenarios. As-is scenarios is basically all about what the current situation is, what the problem that the user is facing. In ideate phase, UX writers, we as UX writers work with the designers to come up with an initial draft of the content that goes into uh, the UI, the different user flows, right? And microcopy is basically any piece of text that goes into the user interface. It could be call to actions, button labels, error messages, and then empty states. It could be anything, any piece of text that goes into the user interface. And then we continue to refine the microcopy based on the hi-fi mockups. And test and evaluate, we work with the designers to test the microcopy that we came up with, right? So, yeah, I think I covered. Yeah, so I have been really fortunate to work with a great, enthusiastic team of designers who really understand the value of content that goes into the user interface. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been possible. I've been in touch with the product management and the lead of UX design in the project that I'm part of. And she's been very cooperative. She understands the value and makes sure that everybody on the team, design and writing both, understands the value and contributes as necessary to the content development work. Okay, now some good examples of dialogues. This is great examples for good microcopy that clearly serves the purpose. Right? The first one, exclusive slots are available for premium customers. That's the language here is just formal, dry, and direct. And then if I apply the principles of UX writing, it becomes premium customer, you deserve an exclusive delivery slot. That's how you motivate the users, right? You get the users to do something. And then wrong password. Wrong password is just a message. I know it's a wrong password, so what do you want me to do next? In this one, the refined piece, it says try again, forgot. If you forgot the password, you can try sending that email and then get your password back, a recovery mechanism, or try again. The third, sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely yes. So the length of the sentence that you use on the user interface, that again is defined by your style guide. That goes into, I mean, this is all very generic examples I have taken just to explain the concept, but it again depends on how you want to do it in your project. It very project and product specific. Definitely, it is not. Yeah. Mhm. Correct. You mean to say this could be central aligned? It, I would prefer seeing something left aligned. I think it improves usability, readability. I think so. I personally think so. I've not seen anything center aligned just because the text was short. I don't think so. And again, all this depends on you ought to break the rules. That is what UX writing is all about. You don't have to have that mindset. You will have to come out of that mindset. You will have to make sure you have a text that motivates the user. You're thinking from your own angle. You're supposed to think from the user's angle. Now he wouldn't think, the user, he or she is, he's not going to think whether this is center aligned or left aligned. Not at all. He's just bothered about what you tell me, right? And then what options I have in this scenario to come out of the situation, right? So that I can accomplish my goal. That is what the user is all about, thinking at that moment. You don't have to really, I personally think that, and there are no hard and fast rules for writing your content. It purely depends on how you perceive the users, how your brand is perceived amongst the user bases that you target. It all depends on so many factors. Any other questions? Absolutely, and that is all defined in your style guide. And all of you, all writers in the team will have to stick to that. Yeah, consistency definitely plays a role, very important role. Yeah. So this one is a classic example. I like it. You have this message that says, book a ticket, onward and return. And then the other one says, check availability. At this point, the user is actually not ready to book a ticket. No, I am not committed yet. I only want to check whether I have the bus or the train or the flight available for the day that I want to or the time that I prefer. Right? I am not ready yet to book the tickets. I will not click a button that tells me, okay, go book the ticket. I will not. I will first want to check the availability and then decide. And then there's something called conversion rate. If you apply the best principles of UX writing, the conversion rate increases. What do you mean conversion rate? Any idea? Have you heard about this phrase, conversion rate? What is it? Any clues? Sorry? Right. So this is basically about getting the user to do something that's desirable, right? You want him to do something desired, and then if you apply the principles of UX writing, the user is more, the chances of the user clicking that button is going to be much more. And then confirmation dialogue. And this is again, I'm being very conversational here, right? Instead of saying just songs uploaded successfully, I say that's a great collection. That's kind of an upbeat message, right? You're telling the user the same message in a different way. That's really pleasant. And I also gave him an option, two options basically: add more, or I'm done. Okay, so that is the end of the steps, the three steps, the major steps that you take to incorporate the process of UX writing in your project. Now, this is about who can make good UX writers, who can make UX writers in the first place. So, go beyond just writing. UX writing is definitely not about wordsmithing. It is not a wordsmithing exercise at all. Now, as technical writers, I assume most of you are technical writers from a technical writing background. We are very used to just concentrate on the wording. And we follow a style guide, definitely, but we don't really apply these principles of being conversational and applying voice and tone or anything of that sort, right? We are not familiar with such a concept at all. At least I was not until some 2-3 months back. I was not. So go beyond just writing. Develop a designer's mindset. You will have to make your design fundamentals strong. Okay, and then know your users, this which we already do. As technical writers, we do user analysis and then get to know the audience. We do audience analysis and everything. We are very used to this. But you also need to know the product that you work on inside out. And then develop an in-depth understanding of your the design and development processes that are followed in your company. And lastly, the maintain voice and tone of your microcopy and content style guide. You can have a specific style guide for UX writing, and that could actually go into the bigger content strategy guide that your organization has. And this is the last slide of this presentation. Why do we do, or why do we need such a process? We already have writers working with developers and designers, and we actually develop good content. But why do we actually need something? Why do we want to do something differently? It actually makes your product more human. You apply or you incorporate that humanness into your product. That is what people now want. They look for human like interfaces. They want to be talking to the product. They want to have that kind of a impression that somebody is helping me, somebody is with me along, who's coming along with me in this journey, right? So you will have to make sure that your product is more human. Definitely, right? So it creates a positive, very positive experience and engages your users much better. This is, I think, is very most critical. It enhances your branding and it differentiates your brand from your competition, right? Yeah, it builds trust in your brand. If you do UX writing or if you develop content for your product user interfaces by following UX writing principles, then you're going to definitely, users will have much stronger trust in your brand, and it's going to improve the usability of your products as well. And I have a couple references. The first one is a book by Kinneret Ifra, and I think this is the only book, extensive one on UX writing, written by Kinneret Ifra. That's the most popular book in the UX writing arena. And then I also had a chance to read this book by Sarah Richards on content design. Definitely, I would strongly recommend that you read this book. And I have been reading a lot of articles on UX writing on this platform called Medium. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this platform, but really, really amazing articles on UX writing. And this being the hottest or one of the most trending topics in the design as well as writing industries, people keep posting articles, interviews, and this is very interesting. I really completely rely on articles in Medium. They are up to date when it comes to the practice of UX writing. And then I picked up some graphics from Pixabay. And that is all I had to say. If you have any questions, or I also have my contact details here. If you're interested in this topic, if you want to make this switch from technical writing to UX writing, I can help you, I can guide you. You can reach out to me on this email ID, and I'm also on LinkedIn. Any questions? Thank you very much for listening. Sure. Sorry? Absolutely, that's a very good question. I actually wanted to cover that as part of one of the slides, but I missed that, I think. So we primarily work with the designers, UX designers. So I have kind of learned the tools like Sketch, InVision, Figma, and we in HCL software we use Figma. That's a design prototyping or wireframing tool. That's what we use. Not really master. I wouldn't say you will have to master the tool. You can just go with the basics. You can just go learn the basics of the tool, just enough to operate. That will do. No, that is what I've done in my project. I just have an account for myself, and I know how to navigate through screens, how to add content, how to make comments, and then if somebody replies to my comment, I know what to do about it, and that much. You will have to get your design fundamentals strong. That's more important. But tools, I think, is only secondary, and I'm sure all of us can learn any tool uh, pretty fast. That shouldn't be a concern.
Having control over the tool like wireframe, like, is not a simple. Sometimes when you are into that into the UX team working, sometimes it comes some of that activity writer has to perform.
Correct.
Create one small wireframe for them. So it should be means like when you are working with Photoshop, yeah, Photoshop tools. Means it is not so handy for a writer to master in the Photoshop.
Definitely.
Awareness and working on the tool is two different things. So when you working on a live project, sometimes it happens that, okay, you have to assist and you have to do the same activity, present them. One of the module you have to present and submit.
Right.
So sometimes is it critical or important to?
It is important.
We have to be as per with the UX designers. Sometimes.
You don't have to be really on par with the designers. I really don't see a reason why we should be, but it is not really critical that you learn the tool inside out. Okay. I don't recommend it. I don't really think that's necessary. You can just learn the basics, and you're going to definitely work very closely with the designers, right? And if they see the value in this work, they're definitely going to help you, right? Excel. Sure.
Yeah, but I'm not familiar about microcopy, so my question will be a little different. You talked about the user personas, empathy maps, and you also mentioned about knowledge of users.
Correct.
So what I would like to know is that how do you gather the actual user information? Because when we add content writing mixed with the designers when they are developing the product,
Correct.
and then we may end up delivering something which customers or users may not find it
Absolutely
good. So how do you integrate that user feedbacks or inputs in the development stage itself proactively?
This is not, sorry. So UX writing that should happen at the very beginning. You're not going to help people, or you're not going to develop content for the user interfaces when development starts. No, it doesn't work that way. You will have to work with the designers in the ideate phase itself, even earlier, define phase itself. So we in HCL software hold user interviews. So all the designers who are responsible for that particular feature, right? Designing that particular feature, and then the writers assigned to the project, all of us get together, we hold user interviews. We collect the feedback, and then we have an internal discussion as to how to enhance the current scenario, right? And then it goes from there. That's how we work.
Yeah, that helps. Means it is being collected through user
Absolutely. User interface primarily. I don't really know if there is any other avenue, at least in HCL software, but we mostly go with user interviews.
Fine. Actually, I was looking into what is the statistically valid sample to go for interviews, or it is just sampling?
Just sampling. It's just sampling.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Any other questions? UX writing. Yeah.
So one question I just want to ask you is,
Sure.
like, earlier we had pull-down menus in all the Microsoft Office products, right?
Correct.
It suddenly moved on to a ribbon-based.
Correct.
Now, I know why is it like. When it changed more from that UI to this UI, what is the reason for Microsoft to think that you should have a ribbon instead of a pull-down menu? By looking at that, I can get an analogy of an Ajax-based thing, context-based thing. So if I use certain interfaces from a leading vendor product, I can get domain knowledge from that product. But what do you really consider when you make a UI out of what do you take care? You're just designing an interface or any component, because I can learn many of the things from using whenever the leading vendor product through their interfaces. Because even if you change one pull-down menu, it goes to SharePoint server. So all the menus are all common across all their products.
Right.
But how did they come across in changing it? Because they never asked any feedback from
Sorry,
anyone.
so that's a very good question, but this is very limited to content. This is not exactly about design. I am not sure I'm skilled enough to answer that question. I'm sorry. This is more about the content that goes into the user interfaces. I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind Microsoft changing the style. I have no clue. Sorry about it. Anything else?
Thank you, Shivi. It was a very insightful session.
Thank you so much.
This is for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Do we have Tushara here?